Honestly, Evan, you're so ugly I'll never have to worry about you cheating on me. The words hit the dinner table like a grenade, silencing the entire restaurant section around us. My wife Marta's wine glass clinked against her teeth as she took another sip, completely oblivious to the social carnage she'd just unleashed. Our friends, former friends as it would turn out, shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly fascinated by their overpriced pasta. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I set down my fork with deliberate precision, the way you might handle a loaded weapon. Interesting theory, sweetheart. Should I cancel my GQ photo shoot? Marta giggled, that shrill sound that had once seemed charming but now felt like nails on a chalkboard. Oh, come on. You know what I mean? You're just so safe, dependable, like a golden retriever. A golden retriever, I repeated slowly, tasting the comparison. How romantic. Our dinner companions, Tom and Jennifer Walsh, supposedly our closest friends, exchanged glances that spoke volumes. Tom cleared his throat. Maybe we should order dessert? But Marta was on a roll now, emboldened by the wine and what she clearly thought was harmless teasing. I mean, look at him. She gestured vaguely in my direction. When's the last time you went to the gym, honey, or bought clothes that actually fit? I swear, sometimes I feel like I'm married to my dad. The silence stretched like taffy. Jennifer's face had gone pale, and Tom was studying his napkin like it contained the secrets of the universe. At the table behind us, a couple had stopped mid-conversation to eavesdrop on our domestic train wreck. You're absolutely right, I said finally, my voice steady as granite. I've really let myself go. Good thing you married me for my devastating good looks. Marta missed the sarcasm entirely. Exactly. I married you because you're sweet and you make good money with your little carpentry business. Looks fade anyway. Little carpentry business. I'd built custom cabinets for half the wealthy families in our main town, including the mayor's kitchen renovation that had been featured in the local paper. But sure, it was little. Well, I said, signaling the waiter for the check, this has been enlightening. As we drove home in silence, Marta staring out the passenger window with that satisfied expression she wore after what she considered a successful social outing, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. More like the moment when you realize the foundation of your house has been slowly cracking for years, and now you're standing in the rubble. Our split-level suburban home looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but somehow everything felt different. The carefully maintained lawn, the matching outdoor furniture Marta had insisted on, the little decorative flag that said, "Home Sweet Home," it all seemed like props in a play I didn't remember auditioning for. I'm going to bed, Marta announced, already heading upstairs. That wine gave me a headache. I stood in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together over 12 years of marriage, and listened to her footsteps on the stairs. The house settled around me with familiar creaks and sighs, but I felt like a stranger in my own skin. That's when I heard them, Marta and her best friend Sophie, who had apparently called right after we got home. Their voices drifted down from the master bedroom, and I found myself moving closer to the staircase. Can't believe you said that to his face, Sophie was saying, her voice bright with malicious glee. Oh, please. Evan's harmless. Besides, it's good for men to know where they stand. Keeps them grateful. Still, calling him ugly in front of the Walshes? He is ugly, Sophie. I mean, I love him, but let's be realistic. When's the last time another woman looked at him twice? It's actually liberating, knowing I don't have to compete. I stood frozen at the bottom of the stairs, my hand gripping the banister so tightly my knuckles had gone white. 12 years of marriage, and this was what my wife really thought of me. Not just that I was unattractive, that was bad enough, but that I was so fundamentally undesirable that she felt safe humiliating me in public. You're terrible, Sophie laughed. But smart. My ex was too handsome for his own good. Always had women throwing themselves at him. Exactly. Evan would never cheat because he couldn't if he tried. It's like having a guard dog that's too ugly to steal. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I walked quietly to my basement office, the one room in the house that was entirely mine. My drafting table was covered with blueprints for a custom entertainment center, and my walls were lined with photos of my completed projects. 12 years of building beautiful things for other people while apparently becoming increasingly hideous myself. I sat down at my computer and, almost without conscious thought, pulled up the website for Mike's gym across town. The same gym where I'd had a membership for 3 years but hadn't visited in 18 months. The same gym where, according to their Facebook page, they offered personal training, nutritional counseling, and something called total life transformation packages. My reflection stared back at me from the dark computer screen. Thinning hair that I'd stopped styling months ago. A face that had grown soft and undefined around the edges. A body hidden under increasingly loose clothing that I'd convinced myself was just comfortable. Maybe Marta was right. Maybe I had become invisible, forgettable, safe. But as I clicked through the gym's website, reading testimonials from men who'd transformed themselves from soft to strong, from overlooked to undeniable, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't quite anger yet. That would come later. It was more like curiosity. A scientist wondering what would happen if he changed the variables in a long-running experiment. I scheduled a consultation for the next morning and booked an appointment with Dr. Martinez, the cosmetic dentist whose ads I'd been seeing around town. Then I sat back in my chair and really looked at my reflection in the computer screen. Ugly, I said aloud, testing the word. It had certainly felt true when Marta said it. But truth, I was beginning to realize, was a surprisingly flexible concept. Upstairs, I could hear Marta getting ready for bed, humming some pop song she'd heard on the radio. The same woman who'd just finished explaining to her best friend why my physical repulsiveness was actually a marriage asset. I opened a new browser window and started researching. Personal trainers, nutritionists, style consultants, dermatologists. It was amazing how many services existed for men who wanted to change everything about themselves. As I scrolled through before and after photos of men who'd transformed their bodies and their lives, I found myself smiling for the first time all evening. Not a happy smile, something colder and more calculating. If Marta thought she'd married a harmless, ugly, grateful little man who would never threaten her perfect sense of security, she was about to get a very expensive education in just how wrong a person could be. I was still smiling when she called down the stairs. "Evan, are you coming to bed?" "In a minute," I called back, bookmarking another fitness website. Just finishing up some work. Work. That was one way to put it. The alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., 2 hours earlier than usual. Marta stirred beside me, mumbling something about the noise, but didn't fully wake up. I slipped out of bed and into the clothes I'd laid out the night before, old jeans and a t-shirt that had seen better decades. Mike's gym looked different at 6 in the morning, less intimidating somehow, filled with serious people who nodded politely and minded their own business. The kind of people who understood that transformation was work, not a spectator sport. "You must be Evan," said a voice behind me. I turned to find a mountain of a man with graying temples and arms like tree trunks. "I'm Mike. Thanks for coming in early." Mike led me through an assessment that was both humbling and oddly encouraging. Yes, I was out of shape. Yes, I'd lost muscle mass and gained fat in all the wrong places. But I wasn't broken, just neglected. "The good news," Mike said, scribbling notes on his clipboard, "is that you've got decent bone structure and you're not starting from zero. You did manual labor for years, right? Your body remembers how to be strong." "My wife thinks I'm ugly," I said, surprising myself with the admission. Mike looked up from his clipboard, his expression carefully neutral. "What do you think?" I considered the question seriously. I think I stopped trying, and I think she got comfortable with that. "Fair enough. So what's the goal here? Feel better, look better, prove a point?" "All of the above." Mike grinned, and I caught a glimpse of the competitive athlete he must have been in his younger days. "I can work with that, but I'm going to warn you up front. Real change is uncomfortable. People in your life might not like it when you start becoming someone different." "Good," I said, and meant it. We worked out for an hour. Nothing too intense, just enough to remind my body what movement felt like. By the time I got home, Marta was in the kitchen making coffee, still in her silk pajamas and looking like she'd stepped out of a magazine ad for expensive skincare products. "You're up early," she said without looking up from her phone. She was scrolling through Instagram, double-tapping photos of her friends' breakfast arrangements and vacation selfies. "Couldn't sleep, went for a drive." She wasn't really listening, absorbed in whatever digital drama was unfolding on her screen. "Oh, Sophie wants to know if we're still doing dinner Friday. That new place downtown?" "Sure," I said, pouring myself coffee. "Should be interesting." Something in my tone must have caught her attention because she glanced up. "You seem different this morning. Did something happen?" "Just thinking about what you said last night, about letting myself go." Marta had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "Oh, that. Honey, you know I didn't mean anything by it. I was just being silly." "No, you were being honest. There's a difference." She set down her phone and really looked at me for the first time in months. "Evan, you're not ugly. You're just comfortable. There's nothing wrong with comfortable." "Comfortable," I repeated, the same way I'd said golden retriever the night before. Right. The conversation might have continued, but her phone buzzed with a text message that made her face light up in a way that my presence certainly hadn't. Work emergency, she said, already heading toward the stairs. That new client wants to meet this morning. I watched her go, noting the extra spring in her step, the way she was already mentally somewhere else. Someone else, maybe. After she left for the office, I spent an hour in my basement workshop, running my hands over the smooth wood of a dining table I'd been crafting for the Hendersons, 12 coats of stain and varnish, each one applied with patience and precision. The kind of work that couldn't be rushed, that revealed its beauty slowly over time. Maybe that's what I needed to become, a long-term project, something that would surprise people when they finally saw the finished product. My phone rang. Tom Walsh, probably calling to apologize for last night's dinner disaster. Hey, Evan, listen, about last night? Don't worry about it, Tom. Marta was just being Marta. Still, that was pretty rough. Jennifer felt terrible afterward. I could hear the careful concern in his voice, the tone people used when they were trying to gauge how much damage had been done. Actually, I'm glad it happened. Sometimes you need to hear the truth, even when it's ugly. Come on, man. You know she didn't mean it like that. But that was the thing. I was pretty sure she had meant it exactly like that. And the conversation I'd overheard with Sophie had confirmed it. Tom, can I ask you something? Be honest. When you look at me, what do you see? The pause was longer than it should have been. I see my friend Evan. Good guy, successful business, solid marriage. That's not what I asked. Another pause. Look, we all change as we get older. It's not about looks, it's about being happy. Which was, of course, a diplomatic way of saying that, yes, I'd become the kind of man people described with words like solid and dependable, instead of anything that might suggest actual attractiveness. Thanks for being honest, I said. Evan, you're not thinking of doing anything drastic, are you? Like, I don't know, having a midlife crisis or something? I looked around my basement office, at the photos of beautiful furniture I'd built, at the drafting table where I designed solutions to other people's problems, at the mirror that reflected a man who'd apparently become invisible to his own wife. No crisis, Tom. Just some overdue home improvements. After I hung up, I drove to Dr. Martinez's office for my dental consultation. Professional teeth whitening, he explained, could take years off a person's appearance. Combined with some minor cosmetic work, nothing dramatic, just optimization, the results could be quite striking. Many of my patients tell me it changes how people respond to them, Dr. Martinez said, showing me before and after photos on his tablet. Confidence is attractive, and when you feel good about your smile, it shows. I scheduled the first appointment for the following week. On the drive home, I stopped by Henderson's Hardware, where I'd been buying supplies for 15 years. Old Pete Henderson was behind the counter, same as always, but when I walked in, he barely looked up from his newspaper. Help you find something, buddy? Buddy? Not, hey, Evan, or how's the cabinet business. Just the generic greeting he'd give any stranger who wandered in off the street. I bought a pack of sandpaper I didn't need and left, but the interaction stuck with me. When had I become so forgettable that people who'd known me for years started treating me like a stranger? That evening, Marta came home later than usual, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright with excitement. Great day? I asked from the kitchen, where I was preparing a salad to go with the grilled chicken I'd made for dinner, part of the new nutrition plan Mike had outlined. Amazing day. This new client, Jared Royce, he's got such innovative ideas about brand positioning, really cutting-edge stuff. Jared Royce. I filed the name away for future reference. Sounds impressive. What kind of business is he in? Marketing consultation. He works with companies that want to completely reinvent their image. She paused, looking at the healthy dinner I'd prepared. What's all this? Thought we could eat better. You're always talking about that clean eating blog you follow. Marta picked at her salad without enthusiasm. I actually grabbed something with the team earlier. We were brainstorming pretty late. The team? Right. After dinner, I went back to my computer and did what any reasonable person would do in the digital age. I looked up Jared Royce. LinkedIn showed a man about my age with perfect teeth, expensive suits, and the kind of aggressive handsomeness that photographed well in professional headshots. His company website featured testimonials from satisfied clients who'd completely transformed their market presence under his guidance. Transformation seemed to be a popular concept these days. I was still researching when Marta's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter where she'd left it. The preview showed a text from someone named Jay. Can't wait for round 2 tomorrow. Tonight was incredible. Round 2 of what? Brainstorming? I didn't touch her phone, didn't invade her privacy. I didn't need to. The pieces were falling into place with the satisfying precision of a well-crafted joint in fine woodwork. My wife thought I was too ugly to cheat. My friends saw me as a harmless, reliable background character in their more interesting lives. I'd become the kind of man people forgot they'd met 5 minutes after meeting him. But here's the thing about transformation. It works both ways. You can go from strong to weak, from noticed to invisible, from desired to dismissed, but you can also reverse the process if you're willing to put in the work. I opened a new document on my computer and started making lists. Gym schedule, nutrition plan, dental appointments, wardrobe updates, all the practical steps of becoming someone new. But I also made another list, a more interesting one. Names and relationships and small details that might prove useful later. Because if there's one thing you learn in the custom furniture business, it's that the most beautiful pieces require the most careful planning. And I was planning something very beautiful indeed. 3 weeks into my transformation, people started noticing, not Marta. She was too busy with her innovative client to pay attention to anything happening at home, but others. The barista at the coffee shop I'd been visiting for 2 years suddenly remembered my name. The checkout girl at the grocery store made eye contact and smiled. Small changes, but I was beginning to understand how much of life was about being seen. Mike's training sessions had become the highlight of my days, not just for the physical changes, though those were undeniable, but for the conversations. Mike had a way of cutting through bullshit that I found refreshing after years of Marta's careful social maneuvering. "Your wife notice anything yet?" he asked as I finished a set of pull-ups that would have been impossible a month ago. "She's been distracted lately. Work stuff." Mike raised an eyebrow but didn't push. He'd been training people long enough to recognize the signs of a marriage in trouble. "You know what's interesting about transformation?" he said, loading more weight onto the bar. "It's not really about changing who you are. It's about becoming who you were supposed to be before life got in the way." I thought about that as I drove home, taking a detour past Marta's office building. Her car wasn't in the parking lot, which was odd since she'd told me she'd be working late again. But there, in the visitor spaces, was a silver Tesla that matched the one in Jared Royce's LinkedIn photos. Working late. Right. Instead of going home, I drove to Murphy's Tavern, the kind of dive bar where locals went to drink beer and complain about their lives. I'd never been there before. It wasn't the kind of place Marta would approve of. But something drew me in. The bartender was a woman about my age with tired eyes and capable hands. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw her do a quick assessment. New face, but not threatening. Decent clothes, wedding ring, probably harmless. "What can I get you?" "Beer. Whatever's good." She pulled a draft and slid it across the bar. "Haven't seen you in here before." "First time. I'm Evan." "Diane, you live around here?" "About 10 minutes away. Married to Marta Hansen. Well, Marta Marston now. She works at that ad agency downtown." Diane's expression shifted almost imperceptibly. "Oh, Marta." The way she said it told me everything I needed to know. In a town this size, reputations traveled fast. "You know her?" "We went to high school together. She was popular." I sipped my beer and waited. People always filled uncomfortable silences if you gave them enough time. "Look, I don't know you, and it's not my business, but..." Diane glanced around the mostly empty bar, then leaned closer. "Your wife's been coming in here lately. With that guy from the city, the one with the fancy car." "Jared Royce." "That's him, real smooth talker. They sit in that corner booth, all intense conversation and meaningful looks. None of my business, but I thought you should know." I finished my beer slowly, processing this information. "Thanks for telling me." "Like I said, not my business, but you seem like a decent guy." Driving home, I felt strangely calm. The last piece of the puzzle had clicked into place, and now I could see the whole picture clearly. My wife was having an affair with her innovative client, a man who represented everything I'd apparently failed to become. Polished, successful, exciting. The house was dark when I got home, but Marta's car was in the driveway. I found her in the living room, curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and her laptop. "Hey," she said without looking up. "How was your day?" "Productive. Yours?" "Exhausting. This Royce project is really demanding." She glanced at me then, and I saw her do a double take. "Have you lost weight?" "Some. It looks good. You should keep it up." The casual dismissal in her voice, as if my transformation was a minor hobby rather than a complete reconstruction of myself, crystallized something cold and hard in my chest. "Marta, can I ask you something?" Still focused on her screen. "Are you happy?" That got her attention. She looked up, her expression carefully neutral. What kind of question is that? A simple one. Are you happy with our marriage? She closed the laptop and gave me her full attention for the first time in weeks. Evan, where is this coming from? You've been acting strange lately. Strange how? I don't know. Different. You're working out, you're asking weird questions, you went out tonight without telling me where. I went to Murphy's Tavern, had a beer, talked to the bartender. Nice woman named Diane, says she knows you from high school. Marta's face went very still. I don't really remember anyone named Diane. She remembers you, says you've been in there recently, with Jared Royce. The silence stretched between us like a wire under tension. Marta's wineglass trembled slightly in her hand. It's not what you think, she said finally. What do I think? We needed somewhere quiet to talk business, away from the office. Business, at Murphy's Tavern. Evan, you're being paranoid. I stood up slowly, aware of how much easier the movement had become since I'd started training. Maybe, or maybe I'm finally paying attention. I walked to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, giving her time to decide how she wanted to play this. When I came back, she was staring at her hands. I never meant for anything to happen, she said quietly. There it was. The admission I'd been expecting but somehow hadn't prepared for. Hearing it out loud felt like being punched in the stomach by someone wearing brass knuckles. How long? It's not, it's just emotional. We connect intellectually in a way that... How long, Marta? 6 weeks, maybe 7. Right around the time she'd started calling me ugly in public. The timing was either cruelly ironic or perfectly calculated. Do you love him? She looked up at me with tears in her eyes, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married 12 years ago. Young, ambitious, beautiful in that sharp-edged way that had made me feel lucky just to be in the same room with her. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. It's really not, I said. You either do or you don't. What about you? She asked, suddenly defensive. When's the last time you told me you loved me? When's the last time you looked at me like I was something special instead of just part of the furniture? She wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the way, we'd both stopped trying. But only one of us had decided to find excitement in someone else's bed. So what happens now? I asked. I don't know. I need time to think. Take all the time you need. But Marta, no more lies. If you're going to keep seeing him, at least have the courage to be honest about it. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Evan. I really am. I believed her, but sorry wasn't going to fix this, and we both knew it. That night, I lay in our bed listening to Marta cry softly beside me, and I felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not heartbreak, that would come later. This was something colder and more useful. Clarity. For 12 years, I'd been playing by rules that only I was following. Being faithful while she explored her options, being grateful while she cataloged my deficiencies, being safe while she sought excitement elsewhere. But games were only fun when everyone understood the rules. And it was time for Marta to learn that I'd been studying a completely different rulebook. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Jessica Chen, a photographer who'd hired me to build custom shelving for her studio 6 months ago. She'd been friendly, professional, and had made a point of complimenting my work when she'd recommended me to 3 of her friends. She'd also mentioned, more than once, that her husband had left her for his secretary and that she was finally ready to start living again. I typed a message. Hi, Jessica. Hope you're well. Would you like to get coffee sometime? I have some ideas for additional storage solutions for your studio. It wasn't a lie. I did have ideas for her studio, but I also had ideas for a lot of other things, and Jessica Chen, attractive, successful, recently divorced Jessica Chen, was about to become part of a much larger project. Marta's phone buzzed on her nightstand. Even in the dark, I could see her reach for it eagerly, then slump with disappointment when she saw whatever message was waiting. Not from Jared, apparently. My phone lit up with Jessica's response. I'd love to. Tomorrow afternoon work for you? I typed back, perfect, looking forward to it. And I was. Because if Marta thought she was the only one who could play games, she was about to get a very expensive education in just how wrong a person could be. The rules had changed. She just didn't know it yet. Coffee with Jessica turned into lunch, which turned into a 2-hour conversation that reminded me what it felt like to have someone actually listen when I spoke. She was smart, funny, and had the kind of confidence that comes from surviving something difficult and coming out stronger. You seem different than I remembered, she said as we walked to our cars. More present, I guess. I'm working on some improvements. Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. You look great. The compliment hit differently than the polite acknowledgments I'd been getting from strangers. This was someone who'd known me before, who could see the change and appreciate it. Jessica, can I ask you something? When your marriage ended, how long did it take people to start treating you differently? She considered the question seriously. About 6 months. At first, everyone was walking on eggshells, like divorce might be contagious. Then they started seeing me as Jessica the photographer instead of Jessica the abandoned wife. Why? Just curious about the social dynamics of reinvention. Are you and Marta having problems? I could have deflected, made some joke about the normal challenges of marriage. Instead, I found myself telling her the truth. Not all of it, but enough. She's been seeing someone else. Says it's just emotional, but you know better? Yeah. Jessica reached out and touched my arm, a gesture of sympathy that felt more intimate than it probably was. I'm sorry. That's awful. The weird part is, I'm not sure I'm surprised. We've been strangers living in the same house for a while now. What are you going to do? I'm still figuring that out. That evening, Marta came home with flowers, expensive ones from the florist downtown, not grocery store carnations, gilt flowers. These are beautiful, I said, arranging them in a vase. What's the occasion? Do I need an occasion to buy flowers for my husband? No, but you've never done it before? She flinched at that. I want to work on us, Evan, if you're willing. I looked at her standing in our kitchen, beautiful and nervous and probably genuine in her desire to fix things. A month ago, I would have grabbed onto that hope like a drowning man reaching for a life preserver. What would that look like? I asked. I don't know. Counseling, maybe? Date nights? I could cut back on work, spend more time at home. What about Jared? The question hung in the air like smoke. Marta's face cycled through several expressions before settling on something that might have been resolve. I'll end it. The professional relationship and the other thing. Can you do that? Just turn off feelings? I can try. I wanted to believe her. Part of me, the part that remembered falling in love with this woman, that had built a life around the idea of us, desperately wanted to believe her. Okay, I said. Let's try. The relief on her face was so profound that I almost felt guilty for what I was planning. Almost. We had dinner together for the first time in weeks, talking about safe topics like home renovations and vacation plans. Marta made an effort to ask about my work, and I made an effort to seem interested in her stories about office politics. It felt like a performance, but at least we were both trying. After dinner, she suggested we watch a movie together, something we hadn't done in months. We settled on the couch, and she curled up against me the way she used to when we were dating. This is nice, she murmured. Yeah, I agreed, and meant it. Whatever else was happening between us, this moment felt real. But moments don't last, and by the next morning, the careful truce we'd negotiated was already showing cracks. Marta's phone buzzed during breakfast, and I watched her face light up before she caught herself and set it aside without looking. Probably work, she said. Probably. I kissed her goodbye and watched her drive away, then immediately called Jessica. Want to grab lunch today? I have some new ideas for your studio project. I'd love to, but I can't today. How about dinner instead? Dinner was more intimate than lunch, more like a date, which was exactly what I was hoping for. Sounds perfect. I spent the morning working on the Henderson dining table, losing myself in the familiar rhythm of sanding and shaping. There was something meditative about transforming raw wood into something beautiful and functional. It required patience, skill, and a clear vision of the end result, not unlike transforming yourself. My phone rang around noon. Tom Walsh, probably checking in to see how I was handling my marital crisis. Hey, Tom. Evan, listen. I need to ask you something, and I want you to know it's coming from a place of friendship. Okay. Were you at Rossetti's last night? With a woman who wasn't Marta? Rossetti's was the upscale Italian place where Jessica and I had ended up for dinner. Apparently, we'd been seen. I was. Jessica Chen, the photographer. We were discussing a business project. Look, man, I get it. Things are tough at home, and Jessica's an attractive woman. But if you're thinking about evening the score... What makes you think things are tough at home? Tom was quiet for a moment. Come on, Evan. After that dinner last week, and now you're out with other women... One woman. For a business dinner. Right. Business. Look, I'm not judging, but you might want to be more discreet. People talk. What are people saying? That you're having some kind of midlife crisis. New clothes, working out, dating other women while your wife's trying to save your marriage. I almost laughed. The narrative was already being written, and I was cast as the villain. Marta's affair was apparently invisible to our social circle, but my business dinner was evidence of moral failure. Thanks for the heads up, Tom. Are you okay? You sound different. I'm great, actually. Better than I've been in years. After I hung up, I sat in my workshop thinking about perception and reality. In our social circle, I was the one behaving badly. Marta was the victim, trying to hold her marriage together while her husband acted out. It was a fascinating study in how people saw what they expected to see. That evening, I met Jessica at a small bistro across town, far from the usual haunts of our social circle. She looked stunning in a way that seemed effortless, and I found myself wondering when I'd stop noticing how beautiful women could be. You seem distracted, she said over appetizers. Just thinking about social dynamics, how quickly narratives form and spread. Ah, the divorce rumor mill. I'm familiar with that particular machine. What did people say about you? That I must have done something to drive my husband away. That I was too focused on my career, too independent, too intimidating. Funny how it's never the cheating husband's fault. Is that what happened? He cheated? Among other things. Turned out he'd been having affairs for most of our marriage. I was just the last to know. The parallel to my own situation was uncomfortably clear. How did you get through it? Badly, at first. Then I got angry, which was actually more useful than being sad. Anger motivates you to make changes. What kind of changes? Jessica smiled, and there was something predatory in it that I found oddly attractive. The kind that make your ex-husband realize what he lost. The kind that make him call you drunk at 2 a.m, begging for another chance. Did you give him one? God, no. But it was satisfying to say no. We talked for 2 hours, and I found myself sharing more than I'd intended. Not just about Marta's affair, but about the years of feeling invisible, unimportant, taken for granted. You know what's interesting? Jessica said as we waited for the check. 6 months ago, you were just the nice carpenter who built my shelves. Attractive enough, but married, so off limits. Now you're the kind of man women notice. It's not just the physical changes, though those are significant. It's the way you carry yourself. Like you know something the rest of us don't. Maybe I do. Care to share? I leaned back in my chair, studying her face in the candlelight. I'm learning that most people only respect you as much as you respect yourself, and I spent a lot of years not respecting myself very much. And now? Now I'm discovering what I'm actually worth. Jessica reached across the table and took my hand. I'd like to help you with that discovery, if you're interested. The invitation was clear, and for a moment I was tempted. She was beautiful, interested, and available. Everything my wife apparently wasn't. But I wasn't ready for that step yet. Not because of loyalty to Marta, but because I was still building towards something bigger. I'm flattered, I said, squeezing her hand before letting go. But I'm not quite ready for that. When you are, let me know. On driving home, I thought about the evening and what it represented. 6 months ago, a woman like Jessica wouldn't have looked at me twice. Now she was openly propositioning me, and I was confident enough to turn her down without feeling like I was missing my only chance. The house was dark when I got home, but Marta's car was in the driveway. I found her in bed, apparently asleep, but her phone was on the nightstand and the screen was still glowing. I didn't look at her messages. I didn't need to. The guilty tension in her supposedly sleeping form told me everything I needed to know about how well she was keeping her promise to end things with Jared. I got ready for bed quietly, thinking about Jessica's words. Most people only respect you as much as you respect yourself. For 12 years, I'd accepted Marta's assessment of my worth. I'd been grateful for her attention, even as that attention diminished. I'd made myself smaller to make her feel bigger, but I was done being small. And tomorrow, Marta was going to start learning what that meant. I was almost asleep when her phone buzzed again. She reached for it immediately, confirming that she hadn't been sleeping at all. In the glow of her screen, I saw her smile the way she used to smile at me, back when I was new and exciting instead of familiar and safe. That smile was going to cost her everything. Friday night dinner with the Walshes had been a tradition for 3 years, but this time felt different. Tom and Jennifer were trying too hard to act normal, and Marta was performing the role of devoted wife with an intensity that bordered on parody. Evan looks amazing, Jennifer said as we settled into our usual booth at Romano's. You must be so proud of his transformation. Marta smiled tightly. Oh, I am. Though I do worry he's becoming obsessed with the gym. Obsessed is a strong word, I said mildly. I prefer committed. It's inspiring, really, Tom added. Makes me think I should get back in shape myself. You should, I agreed. It's amazing what you discover about yourself when you start pushing boundaries. The conversation continued in that vein. safe topics peppered with subtle tension. But I was watching Marta, noting how often she checked her phone, how distracted she seemed despite her performance of marital bliss. Halfway through dinner, her phone buzzed with a call. She glanced at the screen, and her face lit up before she caught herself. "Excuse me, this is work. I should take it." She stepped away from the table, and I watched through the restaurant window as she paced in the parking lot, animated and smiling in a way she hadn't smiled at me in months. "Everything okay at home?" Jennifer asked quietly. "Define okay," I said. Tom and Jennifer exchanged glances. "Evan, we're worried about you. You seem different lately." "Different how?" "Harder," Jennifer said. "Less patient, and the rumors about you and that photographer." "Jessica Chen, we're friends." "Just friends?" Tom asked. I considered the question. "For now." "What does that mean?" "It means I'm keeping my options open." The silence that followed was heavy with disapproval. Tom leaned forward, his voice low and urgent. "Look, man, I get it. Marta's been difficult lately, and you're going through some kind of midlife crisis, but throwing away 12 years of marriage for some rebound relationship? Who says I'm throwing anything away? Then what are you doing?" Marta returned to the table before I could answer, her cheeks flushed and her eyes bright. "Sorry about that. Crisis averted." "What kind of crisis?" I asked. "Oh, client emergency. Jared needed some quick feedback on a presentation." "Jared." "At 9 o'clock on a Friday night." "Right." The rest of dinner passed in stilted conversation, and I could feel the Walsh's disapproval like a physical weight. In their version of events, I was the problem. Marta was trying to save our marriage while I acted out with other women and transformed myself into someone they didn't recognize. It was a compelling narrative. It was also complete bullshit. After dinner, Marta and I drove home in silence. She was texting someone, her fingers flying over the screen with the kind of urgency reserved for new love or guilty secrets. "Good crisis management?" I asked. "What?" "With Jared. You seem to handle it well." "Oh, yes, it was just a presentation issue." "Must be important to call so late on a Friday." Marta's fingers stilled on her phone. "He's very dedicated to his clients." "I'm sure he is." We pulled into our driveway, and I noticed that Marta made no move to get out of the car. She was staring at her phone again, at whatever message had just arrived. "Marta." "Are we really going to keep pretending?" She looked up, and in the dim light from the dashboard, I could see the guilt and defiance warring in her expression. "Pretending what?" "That you ended things with him, that this is working, that we're happy." "I am trying, Evan. I really am." "No, you're not. You're managing me while you figure out what you really want." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? You promised to end things with Jared, but you're still texting him at dinner. You say you want to work on our marriage, but you light up when he calls in a way you never do when I walk in a room." Marta's phone buzzed again, and she glanced at it reflexively before catching herself. "See," I said. "Even now, he's more interesting than this conversation." "Evan, please. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to do the right thing." "What's the right thing, Marta? What do you actually want?" The question hung between us like a challenge. For a moment, I thought she might actually answer honestly. Instead, she deflected. "What do you want? Because lately it feels like you want to punish me." "Maybe I do." The admission surprised us both. Marta's eyes widened, and I realized I'd crossed some line I hadn't known existed. "Punish me how?" "I haven't decided yet." We stared at each other in the dark car. 12 years of marriage reduced to this moment of perfect clarity. She was afraid of me, maybe for the first time in our relationship, and I was discovering that I liked it. "I'm going inside," she said finally. "Good idea." I sat in the car for a few minutes after she left, thinking about the evening and what it had revealed. Tom and Jennifer saw me as the villain in this story, but they only had half the information. Our entire social circle was probably talking about my midlife crisis and poor Marta's attempts to save her marriage. Let them talk. Soon enough, they'd have the whole story. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. "How was dinner with the friends? Still want to grab a drink later?" I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Rain check, but I might need that drink sooner than expected. Everything okay?" "Getting there." Inside, I found Marta in the living room with her laptop, supposedly working, but obviously distracted. Her phone was face down on the coffee table, but it kept lighting up with notifications. "Popular night?" I observed. "Just work stuff." I sat down across from her, and she looked up nervously. "Marta, I want to ask you something, and I want you to really think before you answer." "Okay." If you could have any life you wanted, with no consequences, what would it look like? She blinked, clearly not expecting that question. I don't know what you mean. Sure you do. If you could wave a magic wand and have the perfect life, what would it be? This is a weird conversation, Evan. Humor me. She was quiet for a long time, and I could see her weighing her words carefully. I'd want to feel excited again, she said finally. Like anything was possible, like I was interesting and desirable and alive. And do you feel that way now? Another long pause. Sometimes. With him? Evan, it's okay. I'm not going to yell or throw things. I just want to understand. Yes, she whispered. With him, I feel like the person I used to be, before I got comfortable and settled and married to me. That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. And you know what? That's fine. You want excitement and possibility and to feel alive. I get it. Marta looked confused, like she'd been braced for a fight and didn't know how to handle understanding. You do? Absolutely. You deserve to feel those things. Everyone does. So what are you saying? I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our perfectly maintained suburban street. I'm saying maybe it's time we both stopped pretending to be people we're not? What does that mean? I turned back to her, and I could see her trying to read my expression. It means I'm done being the safe choice, Marta. I'm done being the reliable husband who's grateful for whatever attention you decide to spare me. I'm done being ugly. You're not ugly, Evan. I never should have said that. But you did say it, and you meant it. And more importantly, you believed it gave you permission to treat me like I was disposable. I don't think you're disposable. Don't you? When's the last time you worried about losing me? When's the last time you thought another woman might find me attractive? Marta's face went very still. Are you seeing someone else? Would it matter if I was? Of course it would matter. Why? Because I'm supposed to be faithful while you explore your options. Because I'm too ugly to have choices. Evan, that's not fair. Fair? I laughed, and the sound was harsh enough to make her flinch. You want to talk about fair? I walked over and picked up her phone. She reached for it instinctively, but I held it just out of reach. How many messages from Jared tonight? 5? 10? Give me my phone. In a minute. First, let's talk about fair. Is it fair that you promised to end things with him, but you're still texting him during dinner with our friends? Is it fair that you're making me look like a fool while you decide which life you want? I'm not making you look like anything. No? Tom and Jennifer think I'm having a midlife crisis. They think I'm the one destroying our marriage. They feel sorry for you. Marta's face crumpled. I never told them anything. You didn't have to tell them. Your behavior told them everything they needed to know. I handed her the phone, and she clutched it like a lifeline. So here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to make a choice, him or me, but you're going to make it honestly, and you're going to live with the consequences. What kind of consequences? I smiled, and I could see her trying to decide if she should be afraid. The kind that come from underestimating people, Marta. You thought I was too ugly, too safe, too grateful to ever be a threat. You thought you could have your cake and eat it too. And now? Now you get to find out what happens when the underdog bites back. I left her sitting in the living room, staring at her phone and trying to process what had just happened. Upstairs, I packed a bag with enough clothes for a few days. When I came back down, she was still in the same position. Where are you going? Hotel. You need space to think, and I need space to plan. Plan what? Your education. I kissed her forehead gently, the same way I had every morning for 12 years. Choose carefully, Marta, because whatever you decide, you're going to have to live with it, and so is everyone else. I left her sitting in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together, finally understanding that the game had changed and she was no longer the only one who knew how to play. The reckoning had begun. The Riverside Hotel wasn't fancy, but it was clean and anonymous, the kind of place where people went when they needed to disappear for a while. I'd been there for 3 days, using the time to plan and prepare for what came next. Jessica had been surprisingly understanding when I'd called to explain the situation. Take the time you need, she'd said, but when you're ready to talk, I'm here. It was nice to have someone in my corner, even if she didn't fully understand what she was signing up for. On Wednesday morning, I got the call I'd been expecting. Tom Walsh, probably acting as Marta's ambassador. Evan, we need to talk. Can you meet me at Murphy's at lunch? Murphy's Tavern, where Diane the bartender had first told me about Marta and Jared's cozy meetings. The irony was perfect. Tom was already there when I arrived, nursing a beer and looking uncomfortable. He'd clearly been elected to handle the intervention. "You look good," he said as I sat down. Rested. "I feel good. Clear-headed." Diane appeared at our table, and I saw her recognize me. "The usual?" she asked. "You have a usual already." Tom looked surprised. "Evan's been in a few times?" Diane said smoothly. "Nice to see you again." After she left, Tom leaned forward with the earnest expression he wore when he was trying to fix things. "Look, man, I don't know what happened between you and Marta, but she's a mess. She's been calling Jennifer crying, saying you've changed, that you're scaring her." "Scaring her how?" "She says you're different, cold, like you're planning something." "Maybe I am." "Evan, come on. Whatever she did, whatever mistakes were made, you guys can work through this. 12 years of marriage is worth fighting for." I sipped my beer and studied my oldest friend. Tom was a good guy, the kind of person who believed problems could be solved with honest communication and mutual respect. He'd never been married to someone who thought he was too ugly to cheat. "Tom, let me ask you something. If Jennifer was having an affair, what would you do?" Marta's not having an affair. "Isn't she?" The question hung between us. Tom's face went through several expressions before settling on uncomfortable resignation. "Look, maybe she's been confused lately. Maybe she's made some poor choices. But that doesn't mean you have to blow up your whole life." "What if I'm not blowing it up? What if I'm finally building something worth having? By dating other women? By abandoning your wife when she needs you most?" "When she needs me most?" I laughed, and the sound was harsh enough to make Tom flinch. "Tom, she called me ugly in front of our friends. She's been having an affair for 2 months. She lied to my face about ending it. At what point do I get to stop being understanding? She made mistakes. People make mistakes. Some mistakes have consequences." Tom was quiet for a moment, then tried a different approach. "What about Jessica? Are you serious about her?" "Jessica is a friend who's been honest with me from the beginning, unlike some people." "So you are seeing her." "I'm considering my options." "Jesus, Evan, listen to yourself. This isn't you." "How do you know who I am, Tom? How does anyone know? For 12 years, I've been playing the role of the grateful husband, the reliable friend, the guy who's just happy to be included, but maybe that was never really me." "So who are you?" I finished my beer and stood up. "I'm still figuring that out. But I know what I'm not. I'm not the guy who gets called ugly at dinner parties and smiles about it. I'm not the guy who pretends not to notice when his wife is texting her lover during date night. And I'm definitely not the guy who forgives and forgets just to keep everyone comfortable. What do you want from her, Evan? What would it take to fix this?" "It's too late for fixing, Tom. Now it's about consequences." I left him sitting at the table, probably composing the speech he'd give Marta about how unreasonable I'd become. That evening, I drove past our house and saw 3 cars in the driveway. Marta's, Jennifer's, and a silver Tesla that could only belong to Jared Royce. Apparently, the support committee was meeting at my house. Perfect. I parked across the street and called Jessica. "Feel like getting that drink now?" I asked. "Absolutely. Where?" "Romano's, where my wife and I used to have dinner with friends." "Isn't that a little provocative?" "That's exactly what it is." Jessica met me at the restaurant 20 minutes later, looking stunning in a way that seemed effortless but probably wasn't. The hostess seated us at a table with a clear view of the parking lot, and I settled in to wait. "Are you going to tell me what this is about?" Jessica asked over appetizers. "Social dynamics, perception management. The difference between being the victim and being the victor." "That's cryptic." "Marta thinks I'm having a breakdown. My friends think I'm going through a midlife crisis. Everyone feels sorry for her because her husband is acting erratically while she tries to save their marriage. But that's not the whole story. Not even close. She's been having an affair for 2 months. Tonight her lover is at my house, probably comforting her about how unreasonable I've become." Jessica's eyes widened. "And you want them to see us together?" "I want everyone to see us together. I want the whole story to come out, not just the version that makes me look like the villain." "Evan, are you sure about this? Once you cross this line..." "I crossed the line 3 days ago when I stopped pretending to be someone I'm not." We were halfway through dinner when I saw the silver Tesla pull into the parking lot. Jared Royce got out, looking every inch the successful executive in his expensive suit and perfect hair. He was followed by Marta, who was dressed like she was going to a business meeting rather than a casual dinner. They were seated 3 tables away, close enough that I could see Marta's face when she spotted me. The color drained from her cheeks, and she said something urgent to Jared, who turned to look in our direction. "Showtime," I murmured to Jessica. "Are you okay?" she asked, reaching across the table to touch my hand. "I'm perfect." And I was. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt completely in control of my own life. Jared stood up and walked over to our table, his expression carefully neutral. Up close, he was exactly what I'd expected. Polished, confident, and utterly convinced of his own superiority. "Evan Marston, I'm Jared Royce. I think we should talk." "Should we? About what?" "About the situation with Marta. I think there's been some misunderstanding." I looked past him to where Marta was sitting, her hands pressed to her mouth like she was trying to hold back words, or tears, or both. "No misunderstanding," I said. "You're sleeping with my wife. She thinks I'm too ugly to do anything about it. Pretty straightforward situation." Jared's composure slipped slightly. "Look, I know this is awkward, but Marta and I have developed feelings for each other. These things happen." "They do indeed, just like consequences happen." "What's that supposed to mean?" I stood up slowly, aware that the entire restaurant was now watching our conversation. "It means you picked the wrong man's wife to sleep with, Jared." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you. See, you thought you were dealing with some pathetic cuckold who'd roll over and accept whatever scraps his wife decided to throw him, but you miscalculated." "How's that?" I smiled, and I could see him trying to decide whether he should be worried. "You're about to find out." I walked over to Marta's table, aware that every eye in the restaurant was following me. She looked up with a mixture of fear and defiance that I found oddly attractive. "Enjoying your date?" I asked. "Evan, please, not here." "Why not here? You've been meeting him in public for months. Murphy's Tavern, remember? Diane says hi, by the way." Marta's face went white. "You don't understand. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. "I've been documenting things, Marta. Photos, dates, times. Your car at his condo, his car at Murphy's when you told me you were working late, text messages I accidentally saw when you left your phone on the counter." "You've been spying on me?" "I've been paying attention, something I should have done a long time ago." Jared returned to the table, his face flushed with anger or embarrassment. "This is harassment. I could call the police." "Please do. I'm sure they'd be very interested in your relationship with a married woman, especially since you're supposed to be providing professional services to her company." The threat hit home. Jared's jaw tightened, but he didn't reach for his phone. "What do you want?" Marta asked quietly. "I want you to choose. Right here, right now, in front of everyone. Him or me." "That's not fair. You can't make me choose like this." "I'm not making you do anything. I'm just done pretending this isn't happening." The restaurant had gone completely quiet. Even the kitchen staff had stopped moving to listen to our conversation. "Marta," Jared said urgently, "we don't have to do this. We can leave." "No," I said firmly. "She can leave with you, or she can come home with me, but she's going to decide right now, in front of all these people, what her marriage is worth." Marta looked around the restaurant, at all the faces watching her, waiting for her decision. She looked at Jared, handsome and successful, and offering her the excitement she craved. She looked at Jessica, sitting at our table like a beautiful reminder of what I could have if I chose. Finally, she looked at me. "I choose him," she said quietly. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I'd been expecting them. What surprised me was the relief I felt, like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had suddenly been lifted. "Good," I said. "That makes everything much simpler." I walked back to Jessica, who was watching the whole scene with wide eyes. "Ready to go?" I asked. "Are you okay?" "I'm free." As we left the restaurant, I could hear the buzz of conversation starting up behind us. By tomorrow, everyone in town would know that Marta Marston had chosen her lover over her husband in a very public confrontation. "What happens now?" Jessica asked as we got to our cars. "Now the real fun begins." I drove home to find the house empty. Marta had apparently gone with Jared, leaving me alone with 12 years of shared possessions and memories. I walked through the rooms, seeing everything with new eyes. The expensive furniture Marta had insisted on, the artwork she'd chosen, the color schemes that reflected her taste, not mine. It was a beautiful house, but it had never really been mine. I went to my basement workshop and sat at my drafting table, surrounded by the tools and projects that represented who I really was. This was my space, the only part of the house that felt authentic. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You'll regret this. She never loved you anyway. Jay." I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back, Thanks for taking her off my hands. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into. Then I blocked the number and opened my laptop. It was time to start the next phase of my education program. By morning, I'd filed for divorce, changed the locks, and transferred half our joint assets to my personal account. I'd also sent a detailed email to Marta's boss, explaining the nature of her relationship with their client and including documentation of their meetings during business hours. Marta called at 7 a.m., screaming about betrayal and vindictiveness. I listened to her rage for about 30 seconds, then hung up and blocked her number too. Jessica called an hour later. I saw the news about your divorce filing. How are you holding up? I'm great. Want to get breakfast? Are you sure you're ready for that? People are going to talk. Let them talk. I'm done caring what people think. We met at the diner downtown, the same place where Marta and I had had our first date 13 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me, but it felt more like closure than revenge. So what's next? Jessica asked over coffee and eggs. I'm thinking about expanding my business, maybe opening a showroom. I've got some ideas about custom furniture that I've never had the freedom to explore. That sounds exciting. It is. For the first time in years, I feel like anything is possible. Jessica smiled, and I realized that this was what Marta had been looking for with Jared. That sense of possibility, of life opening up instead of closing down. The difference was, I'd found it without betraying anyone. My phone buzzed with a text from Tom Walsh. Heard about the divorce. Sorry, man. If you need anything. I typed back. Thanks, but I'm good. Better than good, actually. And I was. The man who'd sat through that humiliating dinner 3 weeks ago, who'd accepted being called ugly and undesirable, who'd been grateful for whatever scraps of attention his wife decided to spare him, that man was gone. In his place was someone stronger, more confident, more aware of his own worth, someone who understood that respect was earned, not given, someone who knew the difference between being safe and being invisible. I looked across the table at Jessica, who was watching me with interest and affection, and I realized that this was just the beginning. Marta had called me ugly because she needed me to be ugly. She needed me to be grateful and harmless and too insecure to threaten her sense of control. But I wasn't ugly. I wasn't harmless. And I definitely wasn't grateful anymore. I was something much more dangerous. I was a man who knew his own value. The divorce would be finalized in 6 months. Marta would discover that adultery had consequences in our state, that her affair with a business client had cost her both her job and her settlement. Jared would learn that excitement was expensive when it came with a vindictive ex-wife and a damaged reputation. And I would build the life I should have had all along, with someone who saw me clearly and liked what she saw. As we left the diner, Jessica took my hand. You know, you never did finish those storage solutions for my studio. No, I didn't. We should definitely work on that. Among other things. I squeezed her hand and smiled. Among other things. Behind us, I could see our reflection in the diner window. 2 attractive, confident people walking into whatever came next. It was a good look for both of us. Marta had been right about one thing. Looks did fade, but self-respect, confidence, and the willingness to demand what you deserved, those things only got stronger with age. She'd called me ugly because she thought it would keep me in my place. Instead, it had set me free. And that, as it turned out, was the last laugh after all.